In this video, we're going to take a look at the different map settings and options that you have at your disposal in Command PE. So as it stands, right now we've disabled every single layer that would be normally viewed on the main screen, with the exception of the rivers, borders, and coastlines option. If I were to actually click this to disable it, you'd have a completely black screen. Believe it or not, there is a globe right here. It is just very difficult to see because nothing is visible on it at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that one back on real quick so you can have a general idea of what's going on. So with map settings, you have a bunch of different options as far as what you can show, and as again, leaving different amounts of detail. The first one, of course, that you need to be aware of is each option is placed in a specific layered order. Anything that is going to be towards the bottom will automatically overwrite whatever is on the top, with a few exceptions. For example, if I wish to see a latitude and longitude grid, this will be visible no matter what your map settings is set to. However, if I wanted to see the Sentinel-2 satellite map, I can override it with any item underneath it, such as the virtual Earth map. Keep that in mind, and that you don't need to have all the layers turned on at the same time. As a matter of fact, in doing so, you're going to be increasing the load on your system as it attempts to go and download the appropriate graphics that it needs. Inside of Command, you have a wide variety of different items as far as maps goes. The Sentinel-2 map is basically going to be a lower resolution satellite imagery option. If you zoom in on it, it's going to automatically run out and try to get a higher quality of the image, but even that has an upper limit as far as how much detail it can show in any given scenario. Often the Sentinel-2 is a great way to kind of get started as far as establishing general trends. Major cities are going to be obvious, maybe our body of waters are going to be very clear as well. However, if we even were to zoom in from our previous scenario where we had that small little airport, the level of detail is not nearly as strong as some of the other options. The next option we have is the BMNG layer. I'll go ahead and start off the Sentinel-2 map. The BMNG layer is basically a detailed terrain layer that, if you want to imagine, if you stripped all of the man-made objects off the planet, you'd be taking a look at directly. This is sort of like almost like a topographical view minus the elevation detail itself. The nice thing about this view is it allows you to see terrain more clearly than seeing it in the Sentinel-2 view. Keep in mind, like I said, if you were to turn this one on and this one on above it, only the BMNG layer would appear above it. The next one we have is the relief layer. The relief layer is basically going to show us all the elevations as well as the depths of water. The way this one works is very similar to anybody who's ever worked with these pseudo-color images for showing terrain. Generally, your darker colors like this, like your browns, are going to show at high altitudes. Your greens are going to show your average altitudes, and your blue is going to change depending on the individual depth. For example, if we come up here towards Alaska, we can see that the water is significantly shallow, but you can see very clearly where the different trenches are. This is a tremendously useful tool for planning missions as well as planning both air missions and underwater missions to make it simpler in order to identify, what kind of terrain, both underwater as well as on land, you can mask yourself behind. The next option we have is called Stamen Terrain. So I'll go ahead and shut this one off real quick. I'll flip this one on real fast. What Stamen Terrain is going to show us basically a map of it. If you want to kind of imagine if you had something like a MapQuest kind of a view of the whole world. The nice thing about this is you're going to get location names, and you're going to get detailed views of all the topography in a given region. The other nice thing about Stamen Terrain as well is if you were to zoom in, anywhere there is any major city or anything along those lines, it will actually start to show you individual roads as well as any sort of terrain features that would be normally visible. For example, if I were to float down here to Las Vegas, and I give it a moment to go ahead and cache all that information off the internet, you're going to notice as I zoom in, you can actually see each individual street as well as major highway, as well as each little piece of terrain and ridgeline available in the nearby areas. The Stamen Terrain is a little different than the Stamen Roads and Cities. What Stamen Roads and Cities does is it only provides you with intelligence as far as what the local cities are, as well as a little bit of the terrain that's around it. Like you can see now, we basically have a black and white grid view where we can only see where all the major roads are. This is a tremendously useful tool if you're planning ground operations. Next, we have what they call land cover. What land cover does is it provides us with a general idea of the different types of terrain available. Keep in mind when you're using land cover, you're not going to know what any of this is unless you activate the legend. To activate the terrain type legend, simply go to map settings, come to the bottom where it says terrain type legend, and click that button. Now we can see what each one of these different terrains actually is. For example, these red zones are going to be urban and built up. These green zones are going to be mostly evergreen needle-leaf forests. We can tell that these yellow zones are basically going to be croplands. And again, as I zoom out, the terrain, the detail will come down, but at the same time, we'll be able to plan this carefully. Now, if our planning operations, keep in mind each one of these different terrain types has a different impact in the world as far as visibility, weapons effects, and so on. If I shut off land cover and switch to virtual Earth, this is going to give us a view of the Earth as far as very, very high quality satellite imagery is concerned. The advantage to this map versus using the Sentinel-2 layer is the fact that you're, like I said, going to be getting these high quality satellite images. Now, if I were to zoom all the way in and give everything just a few moments to go ahead and pre-cache, you can see that the level of detail is significantly better using the virtual Earth option. Again, I can see individual buildings, I can see individual revetments, and everything along those lines for the purposes of planning. Next, we have custom layers. Custom layers is going to be the subject of a different video, but it basically gives you the ability to paste objects onto the world that can be used as a specific layer. Our final option down here, two options, is going to be place names. By clicking on place names, it will automatically generate the appropriate names for the local areas. And now if we had like a major city or something along those lines, it will go ahead and display the names of those as they start to pop up. Keep in mind, if you're using the tool for statements or roads and cities, it will automatically generate these names as well. Last but not least, we have the ability to go ahead and do day and night lighting. What this does is it basically shows you relatively how bright everything is depending on what part of the world is being touched by the sun at the time. So for example, it's a local time about 1:30 in the morning. If we make our way towards the other hemisphere, you'll notice that the brightness progressively goes down until we get all the way to the other side of things when it's going to start coming up. Keep in mind, this brightness is going to be very, very difficult to identify unless there's something to go ahead and show underneath it. So for example, if I show up the BMNG layer, it makes it very, very clear right when the transition between daytime and nighttime begins to take place. At the bottom here, we have the 3D view option, which automatically connects to TAC-View, assuming that you have that installed and pre-set up. This is different than the 3D view that you can get using TAC-View RT, but that is the subject of a different video for later on. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our different options as far as what we have in map settings. So go ahead and I'll put all my layers away real quickly here. I'll shut this one off. Shut this one off. We'll leave just BMNG. We'll go ahead and switch to the other side. And now we have the ability to go ahead and take a look at our other options. Under map settings, you have a wide variety of different pieces of information that can be displayed on the screen. The first one is you have the ability to set the range of certain sensors. For example, any air sensor is going to be shown with a white circle. Any surface sensors, surface search radar, is going to be shown with a yellow. Any underwater sensors is going to be indicated by this light green. Air weapons, as far as range goes, is going to be covered by this light red. Surface weapons are going to be covered by this dark red. Any land-based only weapons are going to be based on the brown, underwater weapons by green, and the current range of the aircraft is going to be indicated by this dark color blue. If we, for example, take a look at our carrier group here, if I were to select this one, you'll notice it has this red circle out here, which indicates the maximum engagement range of any sort of weapon that it has that can engage air targets. This inner tighter green circle also indicates anything as far as the different ranges of any sort of underwater searching devices do as well. Keep in mind, these rings only are visible when those particular weapons are both available or sensors are engaged in such a way that they can actually be used. You'll notice there's a much, much tighter green circle here to indicate the range of all the underwater weapons. Now, the blue circle that we saw at the top is a little bit more complicated. So what I'm going to do is quickly borrow ourselves an aircraft. Now, if I select this aircraft, I can see immediately what its weapon range is, but I also have the ability to see its total range, which is going to be this blue circle here. So if I were to unpause this scenario and order this unit to go up to afterburner, you'll notice that its range is significantly reduced. If I were to order up to a loiter speed, you'll notice its range also comes down a little bit since it's not going to be traveling down. If I go to a cruise speed, of course, it's going to be getting my maximum particular range, and you can see that at any given time. One problem that you may encounter, however, when you start having multiple of these range circles visible on the screen at the same time is things start to get cluttered. To avoid that, you have the ability to select range settings for either the selected unit, all units, or simply do not show. So for this example, if I clicked on selected unit, I can now only see what I see for this one. Now, if you select a group of units, such as my surface action group here, I will see a combination, a sum of all the different sensor settings that we have here. And again, if I were to take this particular aircraft and turn on its own radar, you'll notice that I can now see the effect of that radar instantly. Keep in mind, this is only from a top-down perspective. Our radars are going to be a cone general shape, so we can't actually see how far down or how far up it is, although we can estimate that quickly, basically, by taking a look at the individual system itself. Also under map settings, you have the ability to show non-friendly range symbols. Any non-friendly range symbol is going to be shown with a dashed line. For example, if I click on this SA3, I notice that there's this new dashed red line going around it, which tells me its engagement range. I also can see this dashed white line to tell me its maximum radar detection range as well, which is also a very effective way to estimate that. We also have the ability to merge range symbols. What that simply means is if you have multiple copies of the same unit and you want to go ahead and make them so that the two sets of sensors go ahead and combine into one bubble, we can do that that as well. So if I were to grab both of these, I'll throw them in a group together. You can see that the sensors are actually merge display. If I were to disable the merge, you would see that the sensors themselves will actually split up and make it more difficult to identify which one. Basically, when you run merge, it's going to make it easier to see. If you don't merge your symbols, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to see over time, especially when you have hundreds of units on the screen. Next, we have the ability to select what we want to do as far as sonobuoy visibility goes. If we want to make them normal, there's simply be objects in the world that we can click on. We can set them to ghosted, which they're going to be a little bit difficult to see, or we can hide them completely. Reference points refer to these little reference points here that we have on our screen, as well as how easy they are to see. Right now, they're set to be normal. If we set them to small, they get a little bit smaller. And of course, we can shut them off completely if we choose to do so. Normally, leave that on normal. Underneath here, we have the ability to show different types of vectors. Now, what makes a vector different than an area is that it's always going to be illustrated by a line. An illumination vector simply refers to a line for what's being lit up. For example, if you're using a guidance radar and pointing at a particular target, you'll get a green line coming from it, pointing directly at it. Targeting is going to tell you what unit is being targeted. A data block is going to provide you with any information around that unit. For example, if I came over here, this little area of white text directly to the right of it is the data block for that particular unit. Data links is going to display any connections we have as far as data linked weapons. For example, if I launch a tactical tomahawk, I can see exactly who it is talking to. Contact emissions gives us the ability to identify the different types of detected emissions from an object. Now, for example, if I were to grab one of these F-18s, I'm going to go ahead and send this one over here, point it in the general direction of what was going on down there. Come down here real fast. I'll grab my handy dandy SA3 and I'm going to go ahead and actively turn on its radar so that we can demonstrate the purposes of this here. So now if I click on this, I'll notice as I start to get a little bit closer, we'll go fast forward things begin like that. If I were to click on the unit and we were able to detect any sort of emissions coming from that unit, it would then display them. So go ahead, contact emissions. We'll go ahead and say selected contact. The other thing this is going to give us the ability to do, of course, is going to be able to select contact as far as all emissions, meaning everything that comes out of the target, fire control, which is going to be shown in red, referring to any sort of fire control illumination radars, and this handy dandy option at the bottom that basically turns on all emissions except everybody else who is fire control will be shown even though everybody else will be normally shut off. This is a very, very handy setting. It's a one that I use all the time. So if I go ahead and click that now, I'll go ahead and get a little bit closer to my target range here. We're going to get even closer, basically to try to trick it into taking a shot. Switch over to the other side real quick. I'm actually going to order him to go ahead. Oh, we've not been able to acquire them just yet. Must be on the opposite side of that mountain. Happens all the time. Pop it up here real quick. Yeah, we should have ourselves a pretty good line of sight. As you can see, now that our aircraft have moved into range, both of these fire control radars are now lit up in red, even though we have the option to only show the selected radar. Again, very helpful option. Below here, we have the ability to go ahead and take a look at any plotted courses the unit has. For example, if I set selected unit, if I click on a unit, I can see exactly where they've been ordered to move, in this case, directly into the alligator's mouth, so to speak. We also have the ability to go ahead and show any mission areas or courses. Now, if I wanted to, for example, create an area, we'll go ahead and create a quick little area around this zone. If I were to create a mission here, I'll go ahead and set this one as a simple patrol mission. You'll notice that this now highlights this region, making it easy to see exactly what I have selected as far as that goes. Towards the bottom, of course, we have the ability to track a selected unit. If we select that and I go ahead and unpause it, it will now follow the air unit as it flies, like I said, right into that gauntlet directly ahead of it. We also have the line of sight tool, which we'll take a look at a different day. And we also have the ability to show multiple different types of mini-maps. The first mini-map is going to be the global mini-map, which is going to show us exactly what things look like on a larger scale. We have the ability to resize this. We also have the ability to go ahead and see a couple different types, such as a camera mini-map, which is only going to show what we're looking at right now. So if I actually to move my screen and I unpause, you notice the mini-map will update to show exactly what I'm looking at. This is a very, very handy view for the purposes of identifying things that are going on in a tight area. The last type of mini-map we have is a scenario, which will show us the extents. You can see our carrier group down here, and you can see our target region up here. That's it as far as the different map settings as well as view options.